Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Ramen Robbie back with another video for you. For today's video, I got something a little different for you. We're going to be throwing it back to the tier lists. If you remember about 4 or 5 years ago, I busted out a couple tier lists. I did every Browns quarterback since 1999, every Browns head coach since '99, and we had some fun with that. I got positive feedback. People seem to enjoy it, and they're fun to put together. So I thought, why not just do another tier list? And since the Cleveland Browns currently are smack dab right in the middle of another classic Cleveland Browns dumpster fire season, which has everybody talking about the draft, I thought, why don't we do a tier list about every Cleveland Browns first round draft pick? And I Googled it, I YouTubed it. Nobody has done this yet to this degree. Nobody has done every Cleveland Browns first round draft pick since '99. So that's what we're going to be doing here for this video. So sit tight, grab a nice beverage, grab a blanket maybe, it's winter now, and enjoy this unfortunately kind of depressing Cleveland Browns tier list, as you'll see with a lot of these grades. But enjoy every Cleveland Browns first round draft pick since 1999. All right, the first round draft pick the Cleveland Browns made when they re-entered the league all the way back in 1999 was none other than Tim Couch. Tim Couch, of course, quarterback out of Kentucky, first pick in the 1999 draft. Tim lasted 5 seasons with the Browns from 1999 to 2003. Had an overall record of 22-37 as a starter, threw 64 touchdowns to 67 interceptions, had 11,131 yards, and had a passer rating of 75.1. So not spectacular numbers, obviously. But as we all know, Tim Couch had a bit of a raw deal. He was supposed to sit and learn his first year behind Ty Detmer, who was the veteran quarterback on the team. But the Browns organization really was guilty of malfeasance, and they named Tim Couch the starter week 2 of his rookie season at Tennessee. And Tennessee was in the midst of a Super Bowl run at that point in time. Tennessee, those were the old AFC Central days. Tennessee was like an AFC North team. They were like Baltimore and Pittsburgh. And Tim Couch got mauled. Javon Curse, I don't know if it was Javon Curse who had 7. I'm sure he didn't have 7 sacks, but I know the Titans sacked Tim Couch 7 times, and Javon Curse contributed to that. And Tim Couch ended up getting sacked 56 times his rookie season. Astronomical. And that significantly affected his development. Let's be honest about it. However, this is where I'm going to give Tim Couch some tough love. At the end of the day, this is where the great players persevere. And, a recent example of this is Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow was sacked 70 times and got the Bengals to the Super Bowl. I don't know if it was the Super Bowl or the AFC title game. I don't know which year it was, but either way, Burrow was sacked 70 times and still managed to have a lot of success. So bad O-line or not, the great quarterbacks find a way. And, you can only have so many excuses. And Tim Couch, it's not like he had a terrible team around him. You look at the Browns receiving core in those days. Kevin Johnson, Quincy Morgan, Dennis Northcutt, Andre Davis. That's a great receiving core. You can do some serious damage with that. So it's not like, he had nothing going for him. I know the O-line was a problem. That was a big question mark. The offensive line was not helping him out or doing him any favors. But, it's not like the guy had no pieces around him. And, statistically speaking, his best season was 2002, and it really wasn't that great. 18 touchdowns to 18 picks. But enough of the negatives. I just had to bring a dose of reality to the situation because there is some revisionist history with Tim Couch. But enough of the negatives. I'll come back to some positives here. He played a part in the magical 2002 season, of course, with all the crazy finishes and led the Browns to the playoffs that year. And we're grateful for all of that. And honestly, I really appreciate how Tim still calls himself a Browns fan. After how his NFL career went and how his time in Cleveland went, he has every reason to like hold a grudge towards Cleveland and the fans and everything, and he doesn't. He calls himself a Browns fan to this day, and that's really big of him. And he's honestly just seems like a great guy. So, you know, anyway, I don't know where that's going to factor into this decision, but just wanted to point that out. But at the end of the day, Tim Couch, I'm going to rank him a C. Tim Couch is going to be a C. Oh, there he's in the B category, but he's going to be a C. By the way, I got to change the format here. Let's do portrait images. There we go. All right. Tim Couch is going to be a C. If you remember my quarterback tier list video from a couple years ago, that was where I ranked him, so it's consistent. But, oh, you know what? I just realized I did not add an F category here. So I'm doing this in live time. We're going to add an F. Sorry. Didn't come prepared. But anyway, moving along to the next first-round draft pick the Cleveland Browns had. And that was in 2000. Courtney Brown, defensive end out of Penn State. First pick in the 2000 draft. Browns had first pick back-to-back years, obviously, as you can tell. Courtney Brown's career was completely derailed by injuries, as we all know. There were flashes of greatness. You know, the Steelers game in 2000, which I believe was one of his first games in the NFL. He had 3 sacks, including the game-winning sack. And then the Bears game in 2001. Most people remember that game for the crazy finish where the Bears overcame a 14-point deficit with like 30 seconds left. But in that game, Courtney Brown had 3 sacks, I believe a touchdown. I don't know if it was a pick six or a fumble or something, but he had a touchdown. And then there's some other play. I mean, he had a very dominant game, that game. But, you know, Courtney Brown could just never stay healthy and was never on the field consistently. Anyway, finishing the rest of his career bio, he lasted 5 seasons in Cleveland from 2000 to 2004. He had just 19 career sacks. Obviously, that's not going to get it done. But I'm going to give Courtney Brown a big break here. I'm going to go D instead of F. So where is Courtney Brown? He's right here. We're going to go D instead of F because, you know, it's not like a Justin Gilbert situation where the guy couldn't play, and we'll get to Justin Gilbert later on. But it's not like that where the guy couldn't play at all. Courtney Brown just, you know, couldn't stay healthy, as I've pointed out. And from time to time, he did show you why he was the number 1 pick. He just came down to being consistent. Which is, and you know, injuries are out of players' control. So, you know, Courtney Brown's going to be a D here. He's getting a break. As you'll see on this list, I like giving out breaks. So, anyway, moving on to 2001. Gerard Warren. Browns selected Gerard Warren in 2001, defensive tackle out of Florida. 3rd pick in the 2001 draft. Lasted 4 seasons with the Browns from 2001 to 2004. He had 16 and a half sacks his entire time in Cleveland. And he really just had a tremendously disappointing tenure with the Browns. I can't recall a single great game or great moment Gerard Warren was a part of. Now, to be fair, I didn't start watching the Browns till 2004, and I was only 9 years old. But I'm just saying, I can't recall. I am not aware of a dominant game he had. He may have had one. I'm sure he had one somewhere. But I'm not aware of any. And I'm sure they were few and far between. The only memorable moment, the only moment I'm aware of is when he laid out Mark Brunell against the Jaguars. It was a late hit, by the way, so it wasn't even a great play. Again, everyone kind of remembers Gerard Warren for being drafted over LaDainian Tomlinson. I feel like, you know, I feel like anytime he comes up, people always think of that. Oh, that's the LT draft where the Browns could have had LT. So, you know, to Gerard Warren's credit, he did go on to play 7 more seasons in the NFL. So it's not like he just was a bust and flamed out. He ended up playing 7 more seasons for the Broncos, the Raiders, and the Pats. But for this video, we're only focused on what he did with the Browns. And It's got to be an F. I'm sorry, he was a huge bust. So Gerard Warren is going to be in the F tier. Got these stupid ads on the screen. I don't know if you can see that, but anyway, up next, William Green. So we're at 2002 now. William Green, running back, Boston College, 16th pick in the 2002 draft. Lasted 4 seasons with the Browns from 2002 to 2005. He had just 2,109 yards his entire time in Cleveland, 9 touchdowns, and he averaged just 3.7 yards per carry, so not great numbers. Willie Green is remembered mostly for the Falcons game in 2002 that helped catapult the Browns to the playoffs. If you remember the classic line from Jim Donovan, "Run, William, run." Well, that was that game. R.I.P. Jim Donovan, by the way. I don't think it was just that game. I think William Green had a pretty strong finish to his rookie season after having a slow start. I don't know if it was the entire back half of the season or just a fourth, but I'm pretty sure he finished pretty strong in 2002. And he helped play a part in the Browns getting to the postseason. And it looked like there was potential for William Green. But it never carried over to 2003. And he had a very disappointing season. It was involved in a lot of off-the-field drama. There was a DUI, then there was a domestic incident. So 2003 was just derailed with just off-the-field drama and stuff like that. And, unfortunately, the rest of his time in Cleveland was the same. I mean, not necessarily with off-the-field incidences. I don't think he had much after that. But, the best way to put it is William Green's most memorable moment, the remainder of his time in Cleveland, was the pregame fight with Joey Porter. So, he didn't really do anything the rest of his time in Cleveland. So, overall, he was a bust, and he was cut after the 2005 season. So he didn't pan out. At the end of the day, he was a draft bust, and that's really all there is to say. But me, like I just said, I like giving out breaks. So I'm going to give William Green a break here. I'm not going to go F. I'm going to go D. So let's find Willie Green on here. Where is he? He's going to get a D. Because as you'll see in a moment, or as you'll hear in a moment, I should say, he did help the Browns get to the playoffs in 2002. And so it's not like he didn't contribute anything. It's not like he didn't have any moments. Anyway, moving on. Jeff Fain. Up next, Jeff Fain. Center out of Notre Dame, the 21st pick in the 2003 draft. Jeff Fain lasted 3 years in Cleveland from 2003 to 2005. Very underwhelming career with the Browns, to say the least. And the biggest way I gauge that, if you recall when the Browns signed LaCharles Bentley, Pro Bowl center from the Saints, they gave him that big contract. When they signed him, I always kind of looked at that as an indictment against Jeff Fain because, and I don't know, maybe this is too vague or something, but why would they have signed LaCharles Bentley if Jeff Fain was any good? And I'll be honest, this is going to probably be my weakest analysis of any player you'll see on this tier list. I have no memories of Jeff Fain. Honestly, I have no memories. I started watching in 2004, like I said earlier, and so again, I was 9 years old, and he was on the team in 2005 as well, but I don't remember anything from him. So maybe he was a fine player, but in Cleveland, it didn't pan out, and he only lasted 3 years here. So, and again, I do think it says something that they bothered to go out and sign LaCharles Bentley. If Jeff Fain lived up to his first-round pick draft status, I don't think they would have dished out all that money for LaCharles Bentley, but that's just me. But just like Gerard Warren, who I talked about earlier, Jeff Fain did go on to have a longer career than I would have imagined. He went on to last 10 years in the NFL, playing for the Saints, Bucs, and the Bengals, and he even made the Pro Bowl as an alternate in 2007. So I'm just pointing that out to be fair to him. But again, for this video, for this tier list, we're only focused on what he did with the Browns. And based on what he did with the Browns, we got to go F here. Jeff Fain has to be in the F tier. So All right, up next, we got Kellen Winslow. Kellen Winslow Jr., tight end out of Miami. 6th pick in the 2004 draft. Lasted 5 seasons with the Browns from 2004 to 2008. And I don't really need any notes for this one. I can just go off memory. Kellen Winslow, unfortunately, did not see any action for the most part until his 3rd year in the NFL, until 2006. Because if you remember, in his rookie year, he broke his leg in like the 2nd game. And then he missed his 2nd year because of that ridiculous motorcycle accident. So he didn't see any action until 2006. But when he finally saw the field, I mean, in my opinion, he showed he was worthy of the 6th pick in the draft. He instantly emerged as like a Pro Bowl caliber tight end. In 2006, he led all tight ends with receptions with 89. He displayed like big playability. I remember there was a play that didn't count from that year, but it was against the Saints. He had some great one-handed grab for a touchdown, or would have been a touchdown. And he just instantly emerged as one of the best tight ends in the league. I mean, as soon as 06, it may have been premature, but he was right up there with like Antonio Gates, Tony Gonzalez, and all of those kind of tight ends. Todd Heap, Heath Miller, those kind of. I think he was better than those guys, but. And then he followed that. He followed that 2006 season with a Pro Bowl season in 2007. He had over 80 catches, over 1,000 yards, and he proved it wasn't a flash in the pan. He proved he wasn't a one-season wonder. So Kellen Winslow was the real deal. He really was. I mean, the guy had amazing hands. Then came 2008. That wound up being his last year with the Browns, believe it or not. And he ended up missing 6 games that year due to injury, and there was a lot of off-the-field nonsense and drama. I believe he was suspended at one point because he was like criticizing the organization for how they handled his staph infection or something. So all that kind of caught up with him, and obviously his numbers dipped because he missed all the time and all the other stuff. And he only had like 40 catches and a couple touchdowns. I'd like to think if he played all the games that year, he would have had another 70 reception season, but I don't know. And then he was traded. Traded after that. The new regime came in and traded Kellen Winslow. It was Eric Mangini. So that's gives you like a kind of a review of Kellen Winslow's time in Cleveland. When he was on the field, in my opinion, he showed he was worthy of the 6th pick in the draft. Unfortunately, he missed a lot of time, though. He missed basically 2 seasons. Then he missed a lot of time his last year. So I can't go A, obviously, but I'm going to go B for Kellen Winslow Jr. Kellen Winslow Jr. is going to be a B. There we go. And that might rub some people the wrong way because of what ended up happening with him after his playing career, but I'm sorry if O.J. Simpson is still in the Hall of Fame. I am allowed to put Kellen Winslow in the B category here. So, anyway, moving along. Up next, we got Braylon Edwards. Braylon Edwards, wide receiver, Michigan. 3rd pick in the 2005 draft. Braylon lasted 4 1/4 seasons with the Browns from 2005 to 2009. And he was traded 4 games into the 2009 season. So, anyway, with Braylon Edwards, we saw flashes of greatness. Obviously, the amazing 2007 season. And other moments sprinkled throughout, but consistency was always Braylon Edwards' problem. He always struggled with drops, and that really plagued him in that infamous 2008 season, which wound up essentially being his last year with the Browns. He had all the talent in the world, very athletic receiver, but again, it just came down to consistency. It wasn't all his fault, obviously. He had things working against him, whether it was subpar quarterback play or having Mo Carthon as his offensive coordinator. There was a lot of stuff like that. So certainly it wasn't all his fault. But, at the end of the day, it came down to consistency. And he didn't live up to the expectation, except for the 2007 season, the Pro Bowl 2007 season, where he, set the Browns franchise record for touchdowns. And I believe had 1,200 yards. And he looked phenomenal that year. Except for that season, he just never lived up to being the 3rd pick in the draft. So, For the rating here, I'm going to go C. I think C is very fair because, I have to account for that stellar season. If it wasn't for that season, he'd be in the D category, arguably F. But you got to give him credit for that. He currently holds the franchise record for touchdowns in a season, so you got to give him that. And yeah, just because of that, I think he'll get a C. I think that's very fair. Moving along, Cameron Wembley. Up next, we got Cameron Wembley, defensive end, Florida State, 13th pick in the 2006 draft. Lasted 4 seasons with the Browns from 2006 to 2009. He was a defensive end in college, but the Browns moved him to outside linebacker. I'm not a fan of when teams do that. That reminds me of when the Browns did that to Jabal Sheard. Because remember, he was initially playing on the D-line when we drafted him, and he was playing great. And then the new regime came in and moved him to linebacker. I never liked that. Because it always seemed like Jabal Sheard was less impactful after that. But anyway, whatever. Getting back to Cameron Wembley, he had a terrific rookie season. He had 11 sacks, which I believe tied a franchise rookie record. And he looked very promising. He looked like a great pick in the AFC North, But didn't do much of anything after that, unfortunately. And his highest sack total after that was just 6.5 in 2009. And in my opinion, he was always outshined by DeQuell Jackson, who was in the same draft class, who the Browns selected in was it the second, third, or fourth round? I don't remember. But anyway, Cameron Wembley just didn't live up to a first-round status. Definitely did not live up to the 13th pick in the draft, So for that rating, I'm gonna go D here because I have to give him credit for the rookie year. The rookie year he was a very impactful player. 11 sacks, looked very promising, but didn't do enough after that, to say the least. So, all right, moving along. Up next, we got Joe Thomas. Joe Thomas, left tackle, Wisconsin, 3rd pick in the 2007 draft. S tier, obviously, no explanation needed. Going the wrong way there. S tier, but no explanation needed. For the sake of time, because we have a lot of names to get through, I'm just going to skip going over his bio. If you need an explanation, I'm not sure why you're watching this or how you made it this far in the video, but moving along here. Up next, we got Brady Quinn. Brady Quinn, quarterback, Notre Dame, 22nd pick in the 2007 draft. So, Browns had 2 first-round picks. The Browns had 2 first-round picks in 2007. They traded back into the first round with Dallas because then owner Randy Lerner demanded it. Sounds a lot like Jimmy Haslam. Anyway, Brady Quinn lasted just 3 seasons with the Browns from 2007 to 2009. Threw for only 1,902 yards his entire time here. Had 10 touchdowns to 9 picks. 3-9 as a starter overall. And get this, never had a completion percentage higher than 53. Just horrendous numbers. And you can't say he was rushed to start because he sat his entire rookie year and half of his second year too. So he had plenty of time to sit and learn. It wasn't like a Tim Couch situation. I will say Brady showed promise in his first career start. It was at home against the Broncos on Thursday night. He did look promising, but it was in a losing effort, and other than that, he didn't do much of anything. So the remainder of his time in Cleveland, I guess there was the Lions game in 2009, but what does that really say? The Lions were 2-14 that year, I believe. So. And of course, he was the quarterback during the infamous 2009 season, which, if you're familiar with my channel, I've routinely called that like a dark horse for the worst Browns team since 1999. They were just atrocious that year. The offense was pitiful. They could, every time they threw for more than 12 yards, it was like a miracle. And he never did anything after leaving Cleveland, so you can't just blame the Browns. So Brady Quinn, this one's an easy one for me. Brady Quinn is going to be in the F tier. I'm sure he wouldn't appreciate that, but I mean, come on. Moving along here. Up next, we got Alex Mack. Alex Mack, center, Cal, 21st pick in the 2009 draft. Browns traded down several times before selecting him. Alex Mack lasted 7 seasons in Cleveland from 2009 to 2015. And he had a tremendous run with the Browns. He made 3 Pro Bowls. And he had a consecutive snap streak that lasted from 2009 to 2014. A lot of people forget that. You know, everybody's aware of Joe Thomas's famed consecutive snap streak, but Alex Mack was right there with him until he broke his leg in 2014 against Pittsburgh. So that's something people often forget. Alex Mack was just a very dependable player, super smart, high IQ, one of Joe Thomas's favorite teammates, so that says something. He eventually left in 2016 because he was tired of losing, and you certainly can't fault him for that. But this is an easy one. Alex Mack. Where is he at? Alex Mack. Where is Alex Mack? There he is. Sorry. I thought I forgot to get his picture for a second. Alex Mack is going to be... Okay, I can't move right now. Sorry. Alex Mack is going to be in the S tier. S tier for sure. That scared me. For a second, I thought I forgot to get his picture, and I was going to be really upset if I had to. Anyway. All right, moving on. Joe Hayden. Up next, we got Joe Hayden, cornerback out of Florida, 7th pick in the 2010 draft. Joe Hayden lasted 7 seasons in Cleveland from 2010 to 2016, made 2 Pro Bowls with the Browns, and became one of the best corners in the game for a brief window. Dare I say he was a shutdown corner. You know, from like 2011 to 2014, I'd say. But injuries eventually caught up to him, and he missed substantial time in like 2015 and 2016. And that ultimately led to the end of his time in Cleveland. He was cut during the 2017 offseason, or it might have been training camp by then, I don't remember. And, you know, part of that was because the Browns were in full-blown tank mode. They were just trying to lose, and they were just cutting ties with anybody who had a semblance of talent. That was a veteran, at least. And, you know, so part of that was they were in tank mode. But I also say, like, I don't think they would have cut him if he was still elite. So I really think the injuries, I think he was showing signs of breaking down, and I think that also played a part in their decision. And he ended up signing with Pittsburgh, which is a huge bummer because he ended up playing for the Steelers almost as long as he's with the Browns. So that's really disappointing. And he showed he still had something left in the tank. But anyway, at the end of the day, for Joe Hayden, we're going to go... Now I can't find his picture. Okay, here we are. For Joe Hayden, we're going to go... Man, don't worry, he's not F. We're going to go A. Joe Hayden's going to go in the A tier because his true prime window where he was like a shutdown corner wasn't long enough, at least in Cleveland. And again, we're focused on what these draft picks did when they were with the Browns for this video. It wasn't long enough. So Joe Hayden's just going to be an A. It wasn't long enough to be an S tier. Plus, he went to go play for the Steelers, so I've got to dock him a few points for that, even though it wasn't his fault. It was just a business decision. Still. Anyway, let me get a sip of water here. Up next, we got Phil Taylor. Phil Taylor, nose tackle from Baylor, 21st pick in the 2011 draft. Lasted 4 seasons with the Browns from 2011 to 2014. I should mention that when the Browns drafted Phil Taylor, they had traded down with Atlanta, part of the infamous Julio Jones trade. Anyway, Phil Taylor had a decent rookie season with the Browns. He ended up getting selected to Pro Football Weekly's all-rookie team. So, again, he had a decent rookie year. It looked like there was something there. Unfortunately, Phil Taylor didn't do much of anything after that. Kind of similar to Cameron Wembley. To be fair, the regime that drafted him was gone just 2 years after drafting him. And that does matter. But still, like I said about Couch, Tim Couch, great players find a way. And at the end of the day, Phil Taylor just didn't have much of an impact when he was with the Cleveland Browns. And he was a bust. He did have one decent year, but he was definitely a bust. So Phil Taylor, I'm going to give him a break, though. He's going to get a D, not an F, because, he did have the one decent rookie year. So that's not an F. It's not an F because, but it's going to be a D. Certainly was not, certainly didn't live up to the 21st pick in the first round. Anyway, up next, we got Trent Richardson. Trent Richardson, running back, Alabama, third pick in the 2012 draft. The Browns traded up a spot to select him. Trent Richardson lasted barely over a season with the Browns, from 2012 to just barely into the 2013 season. Anyway, to go over his one year with the Browns, essentially, in 2012, his rookie year, it wasn't all that bad, believe it or not. He had 950 yards, and he had 11 touchdowns, which broke Jim Brown's rookie record for touchdowns. However, Richardson had just 3.6 yards per carry, which was the lowest of all running backs in his draft class, so that's the catch. But still, at this point, nobody talked about Trent Richardson as a draft bust. Like, after his rookie year, he was still a fan favorite, probably because of all the touchdowns. But I think because he had the reputation of being like a bruising back, and again, he had all the touchdowns. At this point, he was still a fan favorite. So he was not considered a bust at this point in time. And that's why the following season, when the Browns shocked the league and traded Trent Richardson after week 2, there was outrage from fans, myself included. People thought they were punting on the season. I was pissed, just like everybody else, because it seemed at this point we didn't know he was going to be the bust he turned out to be. So it just seemed like a ridiculous decision. Like, what are you doing? But it turned out to be a great move. The Browns fleeced the Colts. They got a first-round pick for Trent Richardson, and Richardson went on to do absolutely nothing with not just the Colts, but anybody else. And he was out of the NFL by 2015. So, I mean, the trade was absolutely worth it. Hats off to Joe Banner for that one. I don't give Joe Banner credit for a lot, but you got to give him credit for that. But, when it comes to my rating for Trent Richardson, this is going to surprise a lot of people, because you hear Trent Richardson, you think of one of the biggest busts of all time, right? But again, for this video, we're just focused on what they did with the Cleveland Browns. And did he break the record? Yeah, he broke Jim Brown's record for touchdowns by a rookie. That has to be considered. In this discussion. So, because of that feat, he's going to be in the D. Trent Richardson is getting a D ranking instead of F because of that. Now, if you're looking at his whole career as a whole, obviously it was an F career. But again, I'm only focused on what happened with the Browns. For this video, as far as I'm concerned, whatever happened after he was traded, I don't care. I'm not looking at that. So, anyway. Up next, we have Brandon Weeden. Brandon Weeden, quarterback, Oklahoma State, 22nd pick in the 2012 draft. So the Browns had 2 first-round picks in 2012. Brandon Weeden lasted just 2 seasons with the Browns, 2012 to 2013. I hated this pick from the second I heard Roger Goodell say his name. I hated it. I hated that he was 28 and I believe turning 29 that season. And what made it worse was the team wasn't built to win now. So he would have been in his 30s by the time the Browns could have theoretically competed or been in a position to compete. So I just never liked that pick for a second. But to go over his numbers, Whedon was 5-15 as a starter, threw 23 touchdowns to 26 interceptions. He had a completion percentage of 55.1. Now, I'm being very generous by even mentioning this, but the regime that drafted Whedon, Mike Holmgren, and Tom Hackert, were gone just 1 year later. So his development was technically affected. But like I said about Phil Taylor and Tim Couch and whoever else, the great players would have found a way. And when you go back and look at Brandon Whedon, his most memorable moments are ridiculous things like getting caught under the American flag and that flip pass interception versus the Lions. And I mean, that tells you all you need to know. So Brandon Whedon, you know what? I got to be fair here. I just remembered this as I'm saying this. I don't even have this in my notes. I just remembered this. I believe he had set the Browns' franchise rookie record for passing yards until Baker Mayfield broke it. I think he actually did have that record. So, man, do I want to go D here instead of F? Because it's similar to the Trent Richardson thing. Like, I have to give credit to accomplishments, but nah, I can't do it. Sorry, Brandon Whedon's got to be an F. If he still held the record, I think I would have given him a break there. But since Baker broke it, he's got nothing to cling to now. Brandon Whedon's got to be an F. Sorry, bud. All right, up next, we got Barkevious Mingo. Barkevious Mingo, linebacker, LSU, 6th pick in the 2013 draft. Lasted 3 seasons with the Browns from 2013 to 2015. Barkevious Mingo was drafted as a defensive end, but was moved to linebacker when he got to Cleveland, so just like the Cameron Wimbley situation. Regardless, Barkevious Mingo had a few moments early on in his rookie season, but after that was inconsistent at best the remainder of his time with the Browns. And, you know, he always found himself, it seemed like he always found himself competing for roster spots. He never had his position locked down. So obviously that's not what you want out of the 6th overall pick in the draft. This one, I don't really have much to say about Barkevious Mingo, but this one's pretty obvious to me. If you're the 6th pick and you're competing for roster spots, you got to be F tier. So Barkevious Mingo is going to go in the F tier there. And again, I don't know if him moving to linebacker had anything to do with his lack of success. I have no idea, but I digress. All right, moving on. Justin Gilbert. Up next, we got Justin Gilbert. Cornerback, Oklahoma State. 8th pick in the 2014 draft. He lasted just 2 seasons with the Browns from 2014 to 2015. And he was an enormous bust, a bust of epic proportions. Of course, it was later famously revealed that the Browns didn't even meet with him before they drafted him. But before drafting him 8th overall, I should say, just unbelievable incompetence. Just unbelievable incompetence. I mean, I know it's cliche to say I could have done a better job, but I guarantee you I could have done a better job. That meeting with the draft pick I'm going to spend the 8th pick on, 8th overall pick, meeting with him would have been on the to-do list. But anyway, that's just the unbelievable incompetence that Jimmy Haslam has overseen since he's been the owner. But anyway, Justin Gilbert had maturity issues. That was kind of the big problem with him. He had all the talent in the world, by all accounts. I think I saw a video of Dante Whitner saying that. But he just wasn't very professional, and he squandered it. He squandered all of his talent, by all accounts. He had virtually no good moments with the Browns. To be fair, he did have that pick 6 against the Colts in 2014, but that was just right place at the right time. That was literally his one career highlight. So Justin Gilbert, easy one here. Justin Gilbert's going to go in the F category. Not a very difficult decision there. Moving on, Johnny Manziel. Up next, we got Johnny Manziel, quarterback, Texas A&M, 22nd pick in the 2014 draft. So again, a draft where the Browns have had 2 first-round picks. Manziel lasted 2 seasons with the Browns from 2014 to 2015, and what a disaster those seasons were. Like Justin Gilbert, Manziel had major maturity issues, and that's putting it lightly. He made his first NFL start in Week 15 of his rookie season. If you recall, Browns owner Jimmy Haslam once again displayed his brilliance by intervening and demanding that Manziel be named the starter over Brian Hoyer, who Manziel was involved in a quarterback controversy with at the time. If you recall, Brian Hoyer had the Browns at 7-6 at that point in the season. Of course, Manziel and the Browns wound up being humiliated by the Bengals 30-0 in Johnny's first career start. He posted a quarterback rating of 27.3. Bravo, Jimmy Haslam, bravo. And he infamously didn't know any of the Browns' playbook going into the game. Stunning. So, once again, thank you, Jimmy Haslam, for that one. Now, to be fair to Johnny Manziel, he did come back a much better player in 2015. This part of his story is often overlooked because of how his career finished and everything that transpired and all the absurdity. But he did come back a better player his sophomore season in the NFL, and he made strides. And looked like a competent quarterback. I can remember there was a game at Pittsburgh where he almost threw for 400 yards. So, and he is credited Josh McCown for that. McCown was the other starting quarterback on the Browns. He was the veteran. And he took Johnny under his wing and taught him how to be a pro and how to prepare week in and week out and all that stuff. And to this day, you can see I think they still have some kind of relationship. Johnny Manziel will kind of shout him out on social media every now and then. So Josh McCown was responsible for the, albeit moderate, success Johnny Manziel had in his second year. But despite the improvement, the off-the-field nonsense in Johnny's life was too big to overcome, and it wound up being his downfall. And in my opinion, what the end of Johnny Manziel was the Billy Manziel incident. I could be wrong. It's possible they were going to cut ties with him regardless, but I've always felt if that incident never happened, I think he could have been brought back for a third year because they wouldn't have really had much to lose. But if you recall, for those who aren't familiar or don't remember, the Billy Manziel incident was the night before the Browns season finale. Johnny Manziel wasn't playing that in the last game because he had a concussion. So all he had to do was literally wait 2 days for the season to end, and then he can go party wherever he wants, right? For as long as he wants. And he couldn't even wait 24 or 48 hours. He literally, on a plane that Saturday, went to Vegas and ended up wearing a wig so nobody would recognize him. And did he have a fake ID or something? And called himself Billy. And it was just such an embarrassment. And I think that was at that point, even Jimmy Haslam was like, okay, we got to get rid of this guy. So I've always wondered if it wasn't for that, if he could have stuck around, but I don't know. Anyway, moving on. Oh, sorry, I didn't even give him his grade. Actually, I didn't even finish. I got more notes here. Sorry, I was thinking about the Billy Manziel thing. Just to quickly go over his numbers, Johnny Manziel finished 2-6 as a starter in the NFL, 7 touchdowns, 7 picks, 57 completion percentage. But, who cares? He set the franchise back 5 years and was an embarrassment off the field. So Johnny Manziel got to be in the F tier. That's a pretty easy one. All right, moving on here. Danny Shelton. So up next, we got Danny Shelton, defensive tackle, Washington, 12th pick in the 2015 draft. Danny Shelton lasted 3 seasons with the Browns from 2015 to 2017. Not a whole lot to say here, honestly. I mean, this is kind of similar to Jeff Fain. I have very little commentary. Danny Shelton recorded just 1.5 sacks his entire time with the Browns. 36, 59, and 33 were his his tackle totals, respectively, from 2015 to 2017. And that's while starting all but 3 games his entire time in Cleveland. So, I'm sorry, Danny Shelton has got to be in the F tier. Only had 1 sack in 3 years. F tier. Moving on, Cam Erving. Cam Erving, tackle, Florida State, 19th pick in the 2015 draft. So yet another year the Browns had 2 first-round picks. Cam Erving lasted just 2 years with the Browns, from 2015 to 2016. And when he came out, Erving was billed as a very versatile lineman. Like, I remember hearing he could play center, he could play tackle, he could play all over the place. And I remember being kind of excited about that. And I even thought maybe he could be like the heir apparent to Joe Thomas or something. But unfortunately, as we all know, Cam Erving had a disastrous tenure with the Cleveland Browns. He really never looked good for a second. It was amazing. And he was gone after the 2016 season. I mean, he was gone like that. So, in my opinion, that tells you all you need to know. Interestingly, just like Jeff Fain, and I forget who else I said this about, Cam Erving went on to have a longish career in the NFL. He played as recently as 2023, and he even won a ring with the Chiefs in, I believe, 2019. But again, we're only focused on what happened in Cleveland, and he was an epic bust. He's a massive bust. But to answer what went wrong in Cleveland, who knows? Was it the coaching? Was it Jimmy Haslam somehow screwing it up? I have no idea. But regardless, like I said, we're only focused on what he did with the Browns. Don't really care what happened in Kansas City. So Cam Erving has just got to be in the F tier. Absolutely. But man, it is just bonkers how many consecutive Fs we've just had. On this tier, they squandered so many first-round draft picks. It's sickening. I mean, the last 2 years I've gone over, 2014 and 2015, they've had 2 first-round picks in both years, and they whiffed on all 4. And then even 2 years before 2014 and 2012, they whiffed on Richardson and Whedon. That could have been 6 first-round draft picks. And let's be fair, you can't hit on all 6, right? Let's say they hit on 4 of the 6. I mean, that accelerates your rebuilding process like that. It's just sickening. Anyway, we take a water break here. Anyway, moving on here. Up next, we have Corey Coleman. Wide receiver, Baylor, 15th pick in the 2016 draft. Browns traded down twice before selecting him. Corey Coleman would last just 2 full seasons in Cleveland, 2016 and 2017, before being traded prior to the 2018 season. If you recall, the Browns were on Hard Knocks in 2018, and there was that infamous scene where Corey Coleman marched into Hugh Jackson's office and demanded to be traded because he was playing with he was practicing with the twos or something like that. Anyway, he was gone shortly after that. And, going over his final numbers in Cleveland, he had just 56 grabs, 718 yards, 5 touchdowns. Definitely not what you would have liked from the 16th overall pick in the draft. And, unfortunately for him, his most memorable moment was dropping the pass that clinched an 0-16 season. So that kind of says it all right there. What else can you say about Corey Coleman here? Got to be... Where's he at? Did I not do Corey Coleman? Am I forgetting him on here, or did I not? Let me see. Oh, I guess there's no Corey Coleman picture. Well, let's just use your imagination. Corey Coleman's going to go in the F tier. So, I knew I was going to forget one, but anyway. All right, up next we have Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett. And again, just like Joe Thomas, S tier. Okay, I don't know why. Sorry, not an F, not a C. S tier. Myles Garrett's going to be S tier for sure. Like I was saying, just like with Joe Thomas, no explanation needed for the sake of time. We're just going to move right along. But just so you know where I'm at, I'll point out he was the first pick in the 2017 draft. So, anyway. Getting close to the end here. I know this is a long video. But up next, we have Jabril Peppers. Jabril Peppers, safety out of Michigan, the 25th pick in the 2017 draft. Yes, the Browns once again had 2 first-round picks. Anyway, Jabril Peppers lasted only 2 seasons with the Browns before being traded to the Giants as part of the infamous OBJ trade. Unfortunately, his time in Cleveland wasn't too memorable. He's mostly remembered for how far back he was always lined up. Defensive coordinator at the time, Greg Williams, always insisted on having him play like 20 yards down the field, or whatever it was. And we always joked, oh, he's always lined up in Willoughby or whatever. Despite that, Peppers wasn't a bum, I feel like. I feel like he put up decent numbers. And it didn't help his development that he was constantly changing positions. He was actually starting to heat up before he was traded. There was a game at Denver towards the end of the 2018 season where he had like 6 tackles and an interception and the game-winning sack. So he was really starting to heat up. And the future looked bright. The future looked very bright. But then he was traded. So that was kind of that. So it's an incomplete body of work at best. Not much to go off of. But as a result, based on his time in Cleveland, I'm going to go C. He's going to get a C. Jabril Peppers will go in the C tier. Because, not an incomplete body of work, but didn't do enough to get a positive rating, like an A or a B or anything. But wasn't like a D or an F by any means. So, anyway. All right, up next, we got David Njoku. David Njoku, tight end out of Miami, Florida. 29th pick in the 2017 draft. So, yes, the Browns had 3 first-round draft picks in 2017. Amazing how much draft capital they amassed this decade. But anyway, David Njoku has what I call Dennis Northcutt, Braylon Edwards syndrome, where he has the big playability. He's totally capable of making spectacular plays, but he always has the one that goes right through his hands. And I know receivers drop passes, drops happen, of course. But with Njoku, they happen with too much frequency, to the point where I don't trust the guy. I really don't. And every time they throw to him, I'm like holding my breath, like gasping. But going back, to give him some credit, going back to the spectacular playability he has. What I think of is against the Buccaneers 2 years ago, where he had that one-handed grab on 4th down to send the game to overtime. Like, that's what he's capable of, but it just comes down to consistency, and he just isn't consistent, in my opinion. So he has, again, what I affectionately call Dennis Northcutt and Braylon Edwards syndrome. But to give him some credit, talk about positive attributes, he is tough as nails. The burnt face game last year, and how he's always shirtless in the pre-games when it's like negative 30 wind chill or whatever. And I think this is correct. I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly, but I think I just saw this on Brown's Instagram. I think David Njoku is now second all-time for receptions in Cleveland Browns history. In other words, he has the second most receptions in franchise history. I think that is true. So, despite how he drives me crazy with the drops, you got to respect the longevity here. And because he has that record, and because he's still on the team, was his 8th year, one of the few first-round picks that lasted 8 years, David Njoku is going to go in the B tier. David Njoku is going to be B. So, there we go. Moving on here. Baker Mayfield. Oh boy. This is kind of like the main event. I imagine many of you skipped to this part of the video. I got to get a cup of water for this one first. Anyway, Baker Mayfield, quarterback, Oklahoma. First pick in the 2018 draft. Lasted 4 seasons with the Browns from 2018 to 2021. 29-30 overall record as a starter. 92 touchdowns to 56 interceptions. 14,125 yards, 87.8 passer rating. But you can really toss all those numbers out the window because, numbers aside, regardless of the numbers, people kind of have their opinion already set in stone about Baker Mayfield. He was and is still a very polarizing figure in Cleveland. Anyway, to go over Baker's bio in Cleveland, and this is probably going to be a couple minutes, so bear with me here. This is the most unbiased, no agenda, down the middle analysis of Baker Mayfield. So sit tight. His rookie season, he was phenomenal, right? He ends up setting or did he tie it or did he set it? I can never remember. I think he tied the rookie record for touchdowns in a season. He threw 27 touchdowns. And that's without starting the first 3 games. So had he started the first 3 games, common sense suggests he would have set the record. So phenomenal rookie season, energized the city and the franchise. By the way, was robbed of Rookie of the Year. I think Saquon Barkley won it. Baker Mayfield deserved Rookie of the Year. That was highway robbery. But phenomenal rookie year. You know, everybody was bought in, and myself included. I remember the feeling distinctly, thinking, "Wow, we finally have our franchise quarterback. This is what it's like to have a franchise quarterback." And he had so much swagger too. It was anyway. Then comes 2019, his second year in the NFL, and it was a sophomore slump, to say the least. You know, he threw 21 picks. He suddenly wasn't accurate anymore. He lost his accuracy, it seemed like. You know, there was a lot of stuff going on at that point. You know, that was the Freddie Kitchens year, and there was no leadership on that team. That was a disaster. They also traded for OBJ that year, and him and Baker never meshed from the second he got there. I always said that OBJ messed with Baker's head a little bit. That's not a very hot take. I feel like everybody has said that, but it was just a bad year. But I didn't overreact to it. And if you watch my quarterback tier list from 4 years ago, I still rated him an A after the 2019 season. So I wasn't concerned about it. I just looked at it as a sophomore slump. You know, it was something to learn from. And then he comes back in 2020, and he had a great year, right? 26 touchdowns, 8 picks, led the Browns to the playoffs, and they end up winning a playoff game. So great season. But, you know, I don't even care what the numbers say. I don't care if the numbers were better in 2020. In my opinion, as good as he was in 2020, he wasn't as electric as 2018. Like, he was good, but he wasn't rookie Baker. There was something about that rookie Baker Mayfield that was just like remarkable. And in my opinion, as good as he played in 2020, he still wasn't on that rookie level. But regardless, he still had a great year. And then comes 2021. And unfortunately for Baker Mayfield, in his second game, he suffers a torn labrum trying to make a tackle on an interception. And then I think he re-aggravated the shoulder against the Cardinals later on in that year. He fell on it awkwardly or something. So that affected his play. And then also the OBJ drama reached its boiling point, and they ended up cutting OBJ midway through the year. And that really divided the locker room. You had the pro-Baker camp and the pro-OBJ camp, and that really became a big problem on the team. And I think that affected Baker's play too. It probably became mental at that point. So you combine the injury with the off the field nonsense, stuff like that. He had a bad year. Statistically, it was not a good year. At the top of my head, I think it was 17 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. And it was just an insanely disappointing season. And that was it for Baker Mayfield in Cleveland. He was traded. The Browns traded for Deshaun Watson after that, and that was it. Here comes the grade, the rating. This is what you're all looking forward to, right? What am I going to grade Baker Mayfield? Before I get to the grade, there's a few things I want to say. I still think, even though obviously knowing what we know now, of course it was a mistake to trade for Deshaun Watson. Obviously, it would have been better to keep Baker Mayfield and 3 first-round picks. But I still think because things are so bad right now, people are over-romanticizing Baker Mayfield. I truly believe that's what's going on. And, I come off like anti-Baker now. Like if you watch that Instagram video I uploaded about a month or two ago, and just other stuff I've said, I come off like anti-Baker, but I'm not anti-Baker at all. I'm happy to see him do well. And, I was a huge fan when he was here. Ask anybody. But I'm annoyed by the Browns fans' revisionist history. Like, when he was here, I'm telling you, 50% of Browns fans wanted to run him out of town. And the narrative, all everybody would say was, oh, if he would stop spending so much time filming commercials and practice more, or, oh, the shoulder's an excuse. If he was really that hurt, he wouldn't be playing. All those things everybody was saying are now out the window, and it's total revisionist history. Now everybody says, oh, he didn't play well because of the shoulder. Well, it's like pick a side, So it's annoying seeing the revisionist history. Baker is playing in the worst division in football right now, and he's still only 500. The NFC South. I mean, there's a big difference between playing in the NFC South and the AFC North. So you combine the revisionist history is what's annoying me right now. Like, people are acting like he was the Super Bowl quarterback and we made such a mistake, and that's what I get kind of annoyed with. But anyway, regardless, when it comes to the grade for Baker Mayfield, I'm gonna go B. I'm gonna go B here, because way too much turbulence to be an A. I mean, it was up, down. And unfortunately, I have to point out another negative here. I believe Baker from 2018 to 2021 had the most picks of any quarterback, and his fourth quarter numbers were atrocious. So, there's no way you can put him in A. But I'll be fair. I think he's a B. He's by far the best quarterback we've had since '99, and he led us to the playoffs. And, statistically, I think he's probably got to be in like the top 4 of a lot of like Browns franchise quarterback records, right? So he's going to be a B. Baker Mayfield will be a B. But moving along. Up next, we have Denzel Ward. Cornerback, Ohio State, 4th pick in the 2018 draft. Yet another draft where the Browns had 2 first-round picks. Unlike most draft picks on this list, Denzel Ward is still on the team today. Anyway, Denzel has been an impactful shutdown corner from the second he stepped foot on the field for the Browns. He had 2 picks in his NFL debut against the Steelers, and you could just tell right away that he was the real deal. In my opinion, he's better than Joe Hayden was at his peak for the Browns. And I don't think many people would disagree. So he has surpassed Hayden, and according to Browns Wire, Denzel Ward has the 2nd highest coverage grade and the 3rd highest forced incompletion rate. Unfortunately, the only negative I'll say about Denzel Ward is he has missed a lot of time due to concussions and other injuries, and that is the only reason he's not going to be S tier. He's missed way too much time. He's missed way too much time to be S tier, and you have to factor that into everything. But no questions asked. He's going to be in the A tier. Denzel Ward is going to join Joe Hayden in the A bracket. Up next, up next, we have Jedrick Wills. Jedrick Wills, tackle, Alabama, the 10th pick in the 2020 draft. Jedrick Wills is still a member of the Browns as we speak, currently in his 5th season. Unfortunately for him, I'm recording this during the dumpster fire that is the 2024 Cleveland Browns season, a dumpster fire that Jed Wills has contributed highly to. Anyway, if I remember correctly, he at least had a decent rookie season, if I'm not mistaken. It looked like there was something to build off of there, but since then he has steadily declined, and it really has bottomed out this year. It really makes you wonder how much Bill Callahan was responsible for the moderate success he even had to begin with. And, he's just been an enormous bust overall. I mean, how many videos do we see on Twitter of him just either putting in low effort or just getting burned, absolutely burned by somebody? So this one's easy for me. Jedrick Wills, got to be F tier here. And last but not least, Greg Newsome. Greg Newsome, cornerback, Northwestern, 26th pick in the 2021 draft. And he's still a member of the Browns as we speak, currently in his 4th season. Overall, Greg Newsome has had some moments, I guess, but given his first-round pick status, he's definitely been a disappointment, in my opinion. And I think most would agree at that point. He's not a total bust or anything like Justin Gilbert by any means, don't get me wrong. But he hasn't had a big enough impact on the team. And I think it's something that Martin Emerson, a 3rd-round pick, has looked more promising at his peak than Greg Newsome ever did. Now, I know Martin Emerson has taken significant steps back this year, but last year the guy was making plays left and right. And at his peak, he seemed more exciting than Greg Newsome ever did. So, and another knock on Greg Newsome is he, did he have no interceptions in college? Did I hear that correctly recently? He had no interceptions in college? And then in the pros so far, he only has 2, and they've both been these like fluky tip balls. So, I mean, that says something right there. That means something. But to say something positive about him, I will give Greg Newsome credit for one thing. He seems to play well against the Bengals. He really gets juiced up for that matchup for some reason. And he delivers for the most part. I think he's even kind of in Jamar Chase's head, which is kind of funny. So props to him for that. But in the end, I have Greg Newsome as a C. I think that's a break, honestly. I'll give him a C. So, again, not a total bust, but not anything to write home about so far. Greg Newsome proved me wrong. But anyway, that is every Cleveland Browns first-round draft pick since 1999. As we all know, they did not have a first-round pick the last 3 years because of the Deshaun Watson trade. So that's why we're leaving off at the 2021 draft. So there you go. And there you have it. That is every Cleveland Browns first-round draft pick since 1999. When you look at all the failing grades or the suboptimal grades on here, it really comes as no surprise that the Browns have been as bad as they have been since 1999. I mean, you got to hit on the draft picks, and when you don't, you pay the price dearly. And really, all these whiffs are just a reflection of the dysfunction that has existed in the Cleveland Browns organization for 25 years now, since they've been the new Browns. And it's just sad. It's really sad. But wrapping up here, hope you enjoyed this video. I'm planning on this being a big year for the Rom and Robbie YouTube channel. I know the last year or two have been very slow and disappointing. Like there have been like these 6 to 8 month droughts where I don't upload anything. I'm gonna try and be better about that this year. I just hit 6K subscribers, which is a milestone for me at least. I know for the big YouTubers that's nothing, but for me it's a milestone. But anyway, I'm gonna close things out here. Hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, I'm Rom and Robbie, and thanks for watching.